The second one, in 2020, when roughly 220,000 Americans had already died of COVID, Joe Biden said about Trump, anyone who is responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. Is that still the standard now that more Americans have died under President Biden than President Trump?
Well, I think the fundamental question here is, what are you doing to save lives and protect people? And the former president was suggesting people inject bleach. He apparently, reportedly, didn't even share with people he was going to interact with that he had tested positive for COVID himself. He continued to provide a forum for misinformation, which probably led to people not taking steps forward to protect themselves, to wear a mask, to eventually get vaccinated. This president has made the vaccine widely available. He's relied on the advice of his health and medical experts, and he is trying to be a part of solving this crisis, getting the pandemic under control. And I think there's a pretty stark difference between their approaches. Go ahead.
This is Peter Doocy engaging in some casual masochism as he lobs one right down the middle of the plate for Jen Psaki, this time trying to equate the COVID responses by Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Because if there's anything that reveals the delusional world that Republicans are living in, it's that they're still trying to claim that Biden is just as responsible for COVID as Trump is. Now, first of all, Peter Doocy didn't hear his own question. He himself quoted Joe Biden as saying, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain president of the United States of America. And the argument is that Donald Trump was responsible for those deaths initially, while the deaths that are occurring now are a continuation of the same mismanagement that occurred while Trump was president. And look, I know that sounds convenient, that I can just blame it all on Trump, but look at the facts. When Trump was in office, as COVID cases were rising everywhere, he opted to bury his head in the sand at the beginning when it mattered most. He fomented protests against stay-at-home orders, he politicized masks, culminating into him triumphantly removing his mask while he himself was still infected with COVID. He literally held a campaign rally that was immediately followed by the death of his own political ally Herman Cain, who caught COVID after that indoor rally. He refused to promote the vaccine, even getting his in private. He spouted off about fake miracle cures and disinfectant, leading to a spike in calls to poison control centers across the country. And now, it's counties that voted for him where COVID deaths are disproportionately higher. Contrast that with Joe Biden, who signed the American Rescue Plan into law, which had $7.5 billion to track, administer, and distribute vaccines, another $46 billion for testing and contact tracing, and $2 billion for testing supplies and PPE. He oversaw the lightning-fast distribution of 461 million doses in the United States, again, despite the vast majority of the resistance coming from Trump supporters themselves. And now boosters have been approved for every adult in America and are widely available. He's been clear and relentless in his efforts to contain this pandemic and to defer to science while doing so. So when Peter Doocy presents Biden's comment that anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain president of the United States, with the operative word being responsible, you cannot look at what Joe Biden did and what Donald Trump did and think that there is any equivalency between the two if you're operating with even a modicum of good faith. Even today, it was revealed by Mark Meadows that Trump tested positive for COVID on September 26th, well before he told anyone that he was positive on October 2nd. And it was during that time that he appeared at a White House reception for Gold Star families, held an indoor press briefing for reporters, and visited his golf club in Virginia. The following day, he held an event on the South Lawn of the White House for workers, and later appeared at the Rose Garden for another event. On September 29th, he stood on the debate stage with a 77-year-old Joe Biden and 73-year-old Chris Wallace, and wasn't tested beforehand, which, by the way, makes this comment on the debate stage all the more disgusting.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
And on September 30th, he attended a rally and a private fundraiser in Minnesota. So again, give me a break if we're actually pretending that Donald Trump was in any way, at any time, interested in protecting anyone from COVID. The guy was willing to infect his own colleagues and family. Let's not pretend he gave half a shit about the American people. And while Peter Doocy's at it, let's not forget that Fox News itself is culpable too, considering that having gleefully done Trump's bidding, it's their own viewers who are less likely than any other major media outlet's viewers to be vaccinated. And considering this pandemic is largely one of the unvaccinated, meaning that virtually all hospitalizations and deaths are among those who haven't gotten the vaccine, there is a very clear argument to be made that Fox has been instrumental in making its own viewers less safe. So if Peter Doocy wants to start pinning the blame, might I suggest he look inward? And by the way, this is all by design. This is what Republicans want. They want this pandemic to be prolonged because they can run on Biden's supposed inability to fulfill his campaign promise and end the pandemic, even though it's basically just Republicans who refuse to get vaccinated and therefore prevent this pandemic from ending. That's why they tweet stuff like, Joe Biden promised he would shut down the coronavirus, he failed. And then they also tweet, no Biden vaccine mandate. In other words, they're supposedly lamenting Biden's inability to end the pandemic while also overtly opposing Biden's ability to end the pandemic. But hey, I'm sure they're totally acting in good faith. So Peter Doocy and Fox News can try to will this talking point into existence that somehow Joe Biden is responsible for Donald Trump's failures, but these two people are planets away when it comes to their pandemic responses. Of course, Doocy and Fox know that, but they're not interested in the lives of their own viewers. They're just interested in pushing propaganda, and they'll continue to do that regardless of who they have to sacrifice on the way. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.